Imagine a silent, star-dusted night, one where the sky feels infinite and safe. But in the late 1970s, that illusion shattered. High above Earth, a Soviet spy satellite was dying, carrying a nuclear reactor at its core. This was Cosmos 954, a secret weapon of the Cold War, now spiraling out of control. Its nuclear heart, meant for surveillance, was on a collision course with our world. The sky, once a symbol of peace, was about to rain down radioactive terror. This wasn't science fiction. It was a real crisis, one the world barely remembers. In the Cold War's shadow, the race for space supremacy had deadly consequences. Cosmos 954 was a near miss, a moment when technology, politics, and human error nearly collided in disaster. As the satellite tumbled, governments scrambled in secret, calculating where it might fall. Would the reactor burn up, or would it poison a city? The world was oblivious, but in the corridors of power, panic reigned. This is the story of how close we came to catastrophe from above, and why we should never forget it. To understand why a nuclear reactor orbited Earth, we need to revisit the Cold War. The US and Soviet Union, locked in a silent standoff, turned space into the ultimate high ground. Satellites became the eyes and ears of superpowers, tracking fleets, intercepting signals, and watching for missile launches. Information was power, and space was the new battlefield. Every new satellite was a potential threat, not just a scientific achievement. The Soviets needed to track American naval forces, especially nuclear submarines, but the technology of the time couldn't provide enough power with solar panels alone. They needed something stronger. The answer: nuclear-powered satellites. Thus, Cosmos 954 was born from a world obsessed with surveillance and control. The relentless pursuit of intelligence pushed technology into dangerous territory. The Cold War's paranoia didn't just shape politics, it shaped the very sky above us. The result was a nuclear reactor in orbit, a risk justified by the logic of the era. The stakes were global and the dangers unprecedented. This is how the race for space supremacy set the stage for disaster. The Soviet solution was RORSAT, Radar Ocean Reconnaissance Satellite. These were not passive observers, they were hunters, scanning oceans for Western warships. To power their radar, they needed more than solar panels. They needed nuclear reactors. Each RORSAT carried a BS-5 reactor packed with 50 kilograms of highly enriched uranium. The plan after the mission: a rocket would push the reactor into a safe, distant orbit. But every launch was a gamble. Another nuclear reactor circling Earth, another potential disaster. Between 1967 and 1988, over 30 RORSATs were launched, each disguised as a generic Cosmos satellite. Western intelligence knew the truth. These were nuclear time bombs in orbit. The world watched, mostly unaware, as the risks multiplied above their heads. The RORSAT program was a secret arms race in the sky, and with Cosmos 954, that secret nearly became a global catastrophe. The margin for error was razor thin. On September 18, 1977, Cosmos 954 launched from Baikonur, its nuclear heart beating in low Earth orbit. For weeks it scanned the seas, feeding Soviet intelligence. Then, disaster struck. The satellite lost control, tumbling helplessly. The failsafe fired a rocket to send the reactor to a graveyard orbit. But the system failed. The reactor stayed trapped in a decaying orbit, doomed to fall. 50 kilograms of uranium now threatened the planet. If the core survived re-entry, it could scatter radioactive debris over a vast area. The Soviets faced a nightmare, a nuclear accident on foreign soil, an international crisis. American tracking stations, including NORAD, watched the orbit decay. They knew what was coming, and so did the Soviets. Secret talks began as both sides realized the stakes. The world was in the crosshairs, and no one could predict where the satellite would fall. Each orbit brought it closer to disaster. The countdown had begun. The fate of millions hung on a failing machine in the sky, and time was running out. As winter approached, most of the world remained unaware of the danger above. In secret, a US-Canadian team, Project Morning Light, worked to predict the satellite's fall. The task was nearly impossible. A small change in the atmosphere could shift the impact by thousands of miles. The satellite's path crossed North America, Europe, and Asia. Nowhere was safe. The Soviets downplayed the risk, but their engineers knew the truth. The reactor could survive re-entry. Weeks passed in tense uncertainty. Predictions narrowed, focusing on North America. On January 24, 1978, the final descent began. NORAD tracked the satellite's last orbits. Leaders watched, scientists held their breath. The world was seconds from disaster and didn't even know it. The falling star was about to strike. The moment of truth had arrived. Before dawn on January 24, 1978, a fireball streaked across Canada's Northwest Territories. Cosmos 954 had re-entered, breaking apart and scattering radioactive debris over 124,000 square kilometers. The fallout landed across remote tundra and Great Slave Lake, home to indigenous communities and frontiersmen. Unaware, they walked on contaminated ground. Operation Morning Light began a joint U.S.-Canadian mission to find and recover the debris. Teams braved brutal cold, searching for radioactive fragments. They found dozens, some tiny, some dangerously radioactive. One piece, the antenna, could deliver a lethal dose in hours. The cleanup cost millions. Canada sent the bill to the Soviets. The wilderness was scarred, the danger real. The silent hunter from space had left a toxic legacy. The world had narrowly avoided a far greater disaster. As Cosmos 954 broke up, NORAD's radar screens lit up with a swarm of objects. For a moment it looked like a Soviet missile attack, a nightmare scenario. The debris cloud mimicked a nuclear strike, triggering alarms. Only prior knowledge and quick thinking prevented a catastrophic response. Operators realized the missiles were satellite fragments, not warheads. The world never knew how close it came to accidental apocalypse. The incident exposed a terrifying flaw in nuclear warning systems. A falling satellite had nearly sparked World War III. After the crash, both superpowers moved quickly to control the story. The Soviets paid only a fraction of cleanup costs and downplayed the risks. The US, with its own nuclear space ambitions, also kept quiet. The public heard of a satellite crash and a cleanup, not the near miss with nuclear war. The true danger, the vulnerability of global security systems, remained classified for years. The world missed a vital lesson about the risks of militarizing space. Cosmos 954 became a footnote, not a warning. The silence was as chilling as the event itself. We celebrate space triumphs, but we must remember our near disasters. Cosmos 954 is a cautionary tale, proof that Cold War rivalries had real radioactive consequences. The line between peace and catastrophe was razor thin. The same ingenuity that took us to the moon also put nuclear reactors in orbit. Dozens of Roarsat reactors and one American still circle above us, relics of a dangerous era. The problem of space debris is now urgent. Next time you look up, remember, our history orbits above us, silent and potentially deadly. Cosmos 954 is a warning from the past. For every celebrated step forward, there's a forgotten stumble. We must never forget how close we came. And we must remain vigilant, so the sky never falls again. The story of Cosmos 954 is not just history, it's a lesson for our future. The sky is still watching,